This is Elmhurst, Our Community, a brand new program. I'm Ken Bartels. To talk about Elmhurst's past, present, and future, we will interview the city's leaders, and we'll start today on economic development. We have Erin Jason, Business Development Coordinator for the City of Elmhurst, and John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Erin and John, we're going to start right out with a question that I hope you've given a little thought to since we talked about it ahead of time, but we all could cite the reasons for why Elmhurst is being so successful and has been successful over time. But if each of you could pick the reason for why Elmhurst is doing so well economically right now, what would it be?
Well, most people are going to hit location, location, location. We are literally the city in the middle of all Chicagoland. So my standard joke is you can get to Wisconsin in under an hour, you can get to Indiana in under an hour, you can get out to Northern Illinois University in DeKalb in under an hour, and occasionally you can get into Chicago in under an hour.
I kind of took a different route than John when I was thinking this through, because location obviously comes into play a lot with my position at the city. But I credit Mayor Morley and our city council, our current city council, for what's happening right now. They're so business friendly, they're so business forward, and Mayor Morley's directive is keep your foot on the gas there and keep going. Don't be complacent. So I credit them for all the activity that's happening now. And
historically speaking, that goes back through several other mayors, including four-term Mayor Tom Marcucci. You know, in the late 80s, Tom used to like to say, the Tribune did a story about the death of downtown Elmhurst, and he would carry that newspaper around. I think it was 1989 the Tribune did that. And so Tom Marcucci as mayor and Tom Borchert as city manager at the time made it their imperative that the city would be actively involved in the economic life of its own community. And ever since then, we've seen the results of it.
Well, and I think it's important too. Those are the ones, if you will, but the other factors, and we can just sort of throw some out, the excellent school system, the variety of cultural attractions, the fact that we are in DuPage County and just outside that infamous Cook County line, but what other ones come to mind?
Well, I think for starters, if you look at a public school system, we're a community unit school district.
Right.
So our high school isn't part of a district with other high schools in other communities. Our elementary schools aren't a standalone. Our middle schools aren't with another district. So that puts everything in there. So you have a great homogeneous public school system. Then you have great private educational systems, Visitation, Immaculate Conception, Emmanuel Lutheran, Timothy Christian, and others that provide every bit of what you'd want to educate your children. And that's an attraction for so many people to buy homes in Elmhurst.
And I would add in just general quality of life. That's a huge issue, and that includes our incredible park district, our incredible public library system, all the museums that you mentioned earlier, and all the activities we have, from the Criterion bike race in the summer to the famous turkey trot every Thanksgiving that I think all of Elmhurst attends. There's so many different pieces, from a weekly farmers market to other live music events. That quality of life really speaks to people, especially when it's like in our business parks, our industrial group, our manufacturers, who want somewhere that is great for not only the CEOs, but also for their young employees to come and live and raise their families.
If you look at the communities around us, who has a college? Then who has great museums?
Yep.
Then who has a symphony? Who has great cultural attractions, great art, multi-successful business districts. Communities struggle to keep their downtown. Elmhurst downtown is thriving, but you still have York and Villette Business District, Spring Road Business District, North Avenue in 83, St. Charles in 83, North York, Butterfield Road in York, Lake Street, Grand Avenue. You know, Elmhurst has a business community that's thriving from the south end of town to the north and from the east to the west, and not a lot of communities have that.
Well, and I think the beauty too of we've cited all the jewels of Elmhurst, which is a term that gets used a lot, but I think the underlying beauty of almost every single one of those organizations and entities that the three of us mentioned is that they're staying current. It isn't like right now they're really good, but right on the horizon, maybe not. And I think the best example of that is, of course, the District 205 $168.5 million referendum, which passed 2-1. So what does a referendum like that say about Elmhurst 1, but the economic viability as it relates to an educational system?
I would say what that, like when that passed so definitively, as you mentioned, Ken, it's a great presentation of the community as a whole, that not only businesses are willing to invest here, but the people of Elmhurst are willing to invest here and keep the community strong. And that overflows then into supporting the Park District with the Park District's future plans and supporting our local economy, our local businesses, and cheerleading when we have new restaurants and new boutiques. And that's why we're getting the kind of retail movement that we are, that other communities aren't seeing, because people are excited about what's happening in Elmhurst.
In terms of that referendum, it actually kind of goes back to the York High School referendum almost 20 years ago. And that referendum at the time, and the numbers are pretty consistent, most communities only have about 22% of the property tax paying residents with a kid in the public school system. So you have to convince 75+% of your tax paying residents that it's of value to invest in that education. And that $87 million referendum was unheard of at the time. No school referendum had passed in DuPage County in a decade. And that referendum passed by a 3-1 margin. And so it was clear to residents the importance of having a great public school system to maintain the value of their house, to attract vibrant businesses, to bring customers into the community, to attract a well-trained and educated employee base. All those things are really important. It's still important. School districts they have a cap. So, and it was a percent or tied to the consumer price index. And when that got put in the early 90s, nobody ever anticipated that the CPI would be zero. And certainly not zero for a year or two.
Unintended circumstances.
Yes, and so they're cash strapped and their hands are tied. You have to go to referendum. And might I point out that this community also has a great Chamber of Commerce that was the first organization to endorse the York High School referendum, and we were the first major organization to endorse this last referendum as well.
I was recently talking to a search consultant for the banking industry. We find ourselves in the Community Bank of Elmhurst. And he surprised me by asking me why it was that 5 of the last 7, I think it was, bankers that he placed with Chicago banks chose to live in Elmhurst. And I said, well, it's no surprise to me because we've been spending a great deal of time focusing on the fact that because of where we are, we can be a very viable community for folks who work in the city. But that falls into that category of transportation-related development, which leads me to the question about, boy, we're adding apartment buildings. It seems like one's coming online on a pretty frequent basis. What's the genesis of that, and what does the future for that look like? Erin, you want to start
Sure.
with that?
Well, transit-oriented development in general is spreading throughout the Chicagoland area. Elmhurst was one of the first to really embrace it as a suburban community outside of Cook. And what's been great about it is that stigma of, oh my gosh, a new apartment complex, what's it going to look like? It's going to be cheap apartments. We found that with them coming online one after another instead of all at once. And Tracy Cross and Associates, who is in that business of can you handle that density and can you fill those spaces, has advised us, yes, Elmhurst can continue to grow that transit-oriented development. And especially with the millennial generation, as well as Elmhurst residents who have been here for a long time, who are not necessarily looking to downsize, but want to kind of shift gears and not have the responsibility of their home or have a separate place, but still have space for grandkids. So transit-oriented development starts looking attractive. And Elmhurst 255 came online, and they were able to fill faster than they anticipated. And now we're just a week away from the mark by Opus at Addison and First. They're a 196-unit luxury apartment complex, and they're coming online next week. And we have 2 condo projects in development right now. And we have future apartment projects on the Development and Planning and Zoning Committee schedule right now. So we know that we can continue to grow if we continue to grow smart and to take it one step at a time.
Yeah, 20 years ago, if you sold your home in Elmhurst, you lived here, you raised your kids, you lived another 20 years.
You went somewhere else.
You had to go somewhere else
Right.
because you weren't leaving a nice home to go to a standard apartment. Well, now the thing's coming in, luxury condos, luxury townhomes, luxury apartments. So people are willing to do that. And certainly in the downtown, the ability to add a density and a built-in customer base. You're going from homes that might have 3 or 4 or 5 cars in their driveway on a daily basis to that empty nester couple moving into a really nice luxury apartment, and their car sits in their parking spot most of the time because they walk around or they jump on the train or they take an Uber to go wherever they want to.
Right.
If I can add, we have 11.4% of our Elmhurst population takes public transportation to work every day, majority of that being Metro. That's double the national average and 2 points higher than the rest of Illinois. So we know that people are using our Metro station. They're wanting to be, as John said, walkable. They want to go to the restaurants. They want to go do activities in their community. And we're really seeing that. And our businesses are feeling that evening density.
We might even need a new train station, you think?
I think so. We're long overdue, Ken. We're long overdue.
And that's on the docket for?
They should break ground late 2020 or early 2021. I would edge on the 2021 bet.
We are the 7th busiest train stop on all of the Metro lines, and we are the single busiest train stop on the Metro West line. And so the old station, if you go by it on a rainy day or a cold day, there's 20% of the riders have coverage and everybody else is fending for themselves.
So it's got to be bigger.
It's got to be 2, maybe 3 times as big as it is now.
The last update to that Metro station was in the 1980s. So it's woefully, as we said, undersized, but it's also not as ADA compliant as it should be for modern transportation facilities.
So a slight curve in the conversation, if you will. As it turns out, Erin, I know that you're coordinating the 2020 census for the city of
Yes.
Elmhurst. Now, on the surface of it, the census and economic development, they don't look totally compatible, but the census is vital.
Yep.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
Economic development, potential investors, dollars, what comes to the state. So are we going to increase, you think?
I think we'll increase. The city has done a good job of keeping up with the census board every year when new apartments and things come online. We do inform them of that. But to have a total recount, and especially there's a stress on making sure all the college kids in town who live on campus are counted as Elmhurst as well. But we'll definitely have more. We've got 58 new townhomes happening right down the block from where we are sitting right now. We have all the new homes that were built where Elmhurst Hospital was previously located. Not to mention the transit-oriented developments we talked about and the new condos. There's just a lot happening in Elmhurst, and we definitely know that we are a stronghold for millennials who are moving out of the city of Chicago and young families as they start their families. So we do anticipate, if everyone fills out their census, which I hope you do, that our numbers will go up. And that's important because that affects our representation at both the state and federal level. It has a lot to do with what we get back in hotel, motel, and sales tax and things like that. It's vital for us to be fully counted.
And we're constantly hearing about the flight from Illinois, and it's just another example of how Elmhurst is bucking trends.
Yeah, Elmhurst will grow in population, but so will DuPage County.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The state of Illinois, however, may shrink, and that could lose people in the House of Representatives out in Washington, D.C. So that's a danger. We already know the stat that the majority of graduates of Illinois colleges leave the state to be employed. They're not staying here. That's a bad stat. Great stat for Elmhurst. Elmhurst has led DuPage County in new home building for basically the last 20 years. And even during the downturn, everybody went down. Elmhurst went down less than everybody else. We're back on basically 100 new homes a year are being built. And in most cases, you're taking a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home and replacing it with a 3, 4, 5 bedroom, 3-bath home with ready-made families already coming in. So and the school district, the public school district, continues to project increases in their student population for the next couple of years.
We've talked about the downtown quite a bit, and we'll be ebbing back and forth with that anyway. But I also want to talk about some of the other areas that may not be quite as obvious, and yet there's a lot going on. And the first one I want to talk about is the North York corridor. It's a TIF district, and it started with Mariano's, which seems like a long time ago now, but it's a wonderful example of how this economic climate is extending beyond the downtown. So what's going on in North Elmhurst?
What's not going on in North Elmhurst, Ken? All kinds of things are going on in North Elmhurst, which makes my job really fun. We have a new Culver's coming to 436 North York. It's something that a lot of people have wanted for a long time, and Culver's has equally wanted to be in Elmhurst for a long time. So they'll be opening this summer. We have all kinds of new businesses stretching from Grand all the way to North Avenue. We have a place called Fades Chicago, a new technical hairstyling salon, Chrysalis Salon Studio, which is actually specifically for cancer patients. They do custom wigs for cancer patients. Brew Point Coffee opened their roastery on North York. A huge renovation into what used to be a truck loading dock. And now that's a draw, and including it's a maker space for Enjoy Illinois. I mean, just really great things are happening along that line. Across the street from the York Center Plaza, where we get inquiries every day on what's happening there, but across the street you have a brand new LA Fitness, you have Bentley's Pet Food, all those businesses that have opened since the TIF started. Further down you have Gem Car Wash, which opened up in 2018. And what's interesting is the owners of Gem Car Wash also own the do-it-yourself car wash that people, if you're familiar with it, yes, by Yorkies.
Which they also own.
Which they also own. So they will be taking down that car wash. So this isn't even out there yet, other than they've given me permission to talk about it with you today. They are taking down that car wash this summer, and they're expanding Yorkies again because the climate is doing so well with so many new businesses up there. They're adding an additional 1,500 square feet of dining space up there. Wilkins Hyundai and Mazda dealerships split into 2 dealerships. Edward Elmhurst Health opened up a brand new, beautiful facility up in that corridor. So we're really stretching, and I'm talking too much. So.
No,
Sorry, John.
absolutely not.
Jump into it.
I mean, you can give a synopsis of the city better than anyone I know. But John, the chamber offices are they're bordering on Lake Street. Lake Street's got some exciting things too.
Oh, yeah. Lake Street is now part of a different TIF. The original TIF went away, and there's some more going on. But part of that new TIF deal was a brand new Elmhurst B&W location, and it allowed Toyota to expand its operations. It was already among the busiest Toyota dealerships in all of the Midwest. And their used cars business is now booming. They're using the old Jaguar site to do used car sales and to do repairs on cars. I found out from Kurt Sheely, whose family owns those dealerships, just the other Saturday, they did 10 BMW sales on one Saturday. That is a huge Saturday. Normally they'd want about 60 BMWs a month. So to get 10 in a single day, that's a
pretty good day.
That's a real good number. And he reported that their used car sales far exceeding the revenue they produced out of the Jaguar store. So that's working to their advantage. They've got a grand opening coming up in another couple of weeks. They'll be hosting a chamber breakfast in April as well, so everybody will get a chance to see it. And since you had mentioned Mariano's, it was so long ago that on the way home from that Mariano's grand opening, it's when the Hawks scored 2 goals in the final minute at Boston to win the Stanley Cup. That's how long ago.
Yeah, you're right. That is a long time ago. Leapfrog back. We're going to leapfrog over downtown and land on Spring Road, where there's virtually no vacancies. But I also want to go all the way down to Butterfield Road, very close to where we are now, and the new housing starts just down the road here.
So as I mentioned earlier, Elm Creek Townhomes is adding 58 new townhomes to their facilities, to their breadth and depth of their offerings there. And what they found was their previous townhome project from several years ago, 92%, I think they told us last time, of the people who moved in when that was brand new are still living there. So they're like, we're not getting that turnover we want. We have an opportunity here to buy this land and build more. And it's, when you look at the renderings, it's just going to be a really lovely addition to that stretch. And what was like it was 3 single-family homes, but they were behind
I was just saying,
old
most people
wooded
didn't
area.
even
You
know
didn't even
those
know what
homes
was
were
there.
there anymore
Right, and
because
it was
of
it was kind of
growth.
scrap trees and
Right,
growth. So
exactly.
it's really going to give a new look to coming into Elmhurst this way.
And Spring Road is like York and Villette. A bunch of communities had business districts that popped up around the rail line that went along there. I lived right on Washington by the York and Villette line, and People's Coal and Gas was there, Hammerschmidt Lumberyard was there, and the freight trains would come in and drop off coal and stone and all those kinds of things. So in Elmhurst, those business districts, even though the rail line's gone or a commuter line no longer services an area as much, those are still thriving. And there's a particular property owner on Spring Road I know who has visions of apartments above first floor retail in that location, which would be a great addition. Some of the older buildings on Spring Road do have apartments on there, but this property owner would be looking at a little nicer apartment, a little more modern, that kind of thing. And so again, you can see an expansion of people who might want to live on a 2-block long business district and take advantage of everything that's there.
I'm often asked, having been in the community a long time, I'm often asked, how is it that Elmhurst seems to have this, I mean, it's not a utopia by any means, but it has a spirit about it, and it always has had a spirit about it, even in times not as good as the current ones we're in. And my answer to that is that more often than not, the whole community roots for the whole community. Now there's always going to be a certain amount of competition or a certain amount of issues between businesses and community and citizens and government but by and large, if something's going well, the rest of the community embraces it. And I think that's a key. That would have been my number one way back when we started. We're going to go to break. And when we come back from break, we're going to talk about things like the business parks and what you two would do if you were king and queen of economic development for a day with no hindrances whatsoever. This is Elmhurst, Our Community, and we're talking to Erin Jason and John Quigley here from the CBE Business Zone, and we'll be right back.
I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. For 100 years and counting, we've promoted an environment that creates success for local businesses and our community. Nearly 600 members strong, we are the voice of business in Elmhurst at all levels of government and a liaison to our residents, consumers, and tourists.
Since 1982.
1981.
1993.
1948.
Since 1955.
1892.
1991.
Since 1986.
1871.
We're here to help our customers' lives go right.
We put our customers and community first.
And innovation and relocation for 2 generations.
Serving our community more than just great meals.
We create innovation in glass and metals.
We permanently solve your IRS problems.
4 generations of family dedication, forever invested in you.
We keep families rolling safely down the road.
For generations, we've helped students reach their full potential.
4 generations of serving the best Bohemian cuisine.
Make that 5.
So make today the day that you become a valued addition to our award-winning chamber, whether as a new member or via reactivation. Contact our office by phone at 630-834-6060 or email info@elmhurstchamber.org to learn about what's in it for you. Be a part of our next 100 years.
Welcome back. This is Elmhurst Art Community, EOC, and we're here with Erin Jason and John Quigley, and we're talking about Elmhurst and its successes in economic development, if you will, just economic successes overall. I think the really important thing as we're going forward is there's more to Elmhurst than retail, there's more to Elmhurst than service industries. We've got a very robust, really citywide business park system. And there's a business park on Industrial Drive, there's a business park on Church Road, but business parks, Riverside Drive on the south side, and even County Line Road where McMaster Carr and a few other places reside. But Erin, I'm going to ask you this question first, but there's a downtown plan, there's a North York plan, is there a business parks plan?
We're working on a business parks plan, Ken. Just in the last 2 weeks, actually, we met with representatives from the Industrial Drive and Church Road areas and talked to them about why Elmhurst, why are you choosing Elmhurst, what else can we do for you to provide services to the businesses, what do you need to see for amenities for recruitment, for workforce, because that's always a challenge these days in all of the manufacturing industries and whatnot. One of the big things we talked about was branding and making sure people know you're in the Elmhurst Business Parks, and also connectivity. How do we get the people who are in the business parks to come to Mariano's or to LA Fitness or Elmhurst Family Restaurant on Lake Street? How do we get them there for lunch or for shopping and whatnot on their breaks?
Well, I know several years ago there was a stakeholders meeting up in the business parks, and there were a few businesses there. One of the things that they said at that time, as I know you know, is Industrial Drive was in bad shape and some of the arterial streets were as well. Was there something the city could do for that? And Industrial Drive's been redone, the area streets have been redone. Amazingly enough, though, one of the things they talked about was walking and sidewalks. And an Industrial Drive sidewalk was put in. The interesting thing about it is, I believe, and I'm in the business parks, that particular one quite often, the interaction between the businesses, now that the employees are collectively sort of meeting each other on the sidewalks, it's changed the whole thought process up there. So an expansion of that kind of connectivity, or even thinking about it in some of the other locations is really a good move. The Chamber has an increased presence in the business parks too.
Yeah, we've always had a concern with the business parks. Where are their employees coming from? How are they getting there? You'd be surprised how many employees in that business park are taking the train into Bensonville, and they come from the south side of Chicago, and they're coming out to do manufacturing jobs and those kinds of things. And so it's imperative that transportation be accessible to them, whether it be a pace bus running through the area, those kinds of things. I think what's really important and what's changed is the businesses in the business park were there for the location. They love that location. My joke at the start, right. You could get anywhere, that's what they love. They can send trucks or servicemen or deliver stuff anywhere from Elmhurst, and they're close to 2 airports. All that is ideal, but they tended to be like little fiefdoms. There's this business, that business, this business, and not even the park was considered connected to Elmhurst. Residents have no idea how much in property taxes those businesses are contributing without infringing on the school district, the library district, the park district, the importance of those businesses there. And then over the years, we've looked at, do we have the right mix of buildings? As industrial and business parks changed, they needed higher ceilings, they needed more open space, And so it's, do we keep these kinds of buildings or do we put them together and do a much larger building? If you've been down the road by Bolingbrook, all of their business park buildings are just huge buildings. But anytime somebody moved out, somebody moved in right away.
Right.
You know, there was a time Keebler had 8 different properties up in that business park, and every time Keebler gave one up, or Kellogg's after Keebler, somebody scooped it up. And so it stays vibrant.
Well, and I think the other piece of the whole business parks area, and this just isn't localized, but the interaction winds up being good for business, which wouldn't surprise either one of you. But I can remember, this is a few years ago, but the story is still viable. I can remember visiting a new business and asking them, you know, what did they, you know, what were their supplier needs and what did they interface with? And I remember this business owner telling me, well, we're really having a tough time finding a box vendor. And I looked at him, the expression on my face must have given me away, but he's looking at me like, you know, why are you looking at me like that? And I said, well, you do know that 2 doors down from you, they make boxes and shipping materials. And he didn't know. He hadn't wandered down there to find out. So I often challenge businesses when I'm there. Do you know your next door neighbor? Do you know the person across the street? Do you know what they do? Do you need external lighting? Do you know that half a block over is one of the premier external lighting companies in the United States? That's all part of this interconnectivity and increased association.
We've got businesses all around Elmhurst in the business parks that do business internationally, that do business with our military. And people have absolutely no idea that that's going on. And they play integral roles in our economy.
So let's pretend, I don't know how much of a stretch it really is, but let's pretend that each of you have ultimate control over the economy of Elmhurst. So what do you focus on and what do you do first? So I'll let you two fight it out.
Queen Erin.
I don't know if I need that title.
Or Mayor Erin, how's that?
No. I'll stick to my day job.
Yeah.
I think we're actually doing what I would do first right now, which is not concentrating on like, what's this one business that we want and knocking on their door and using all our resources just going after that one place, but instead looking at Elmhurst as a whole and saying, what can we do to make this community better? So in the downtown, for instance, we've put in ADA compliant tree grates, which seems like such a simple thing to do, or a new pedestrian crossing and new crosswalks in general that are going to be stamped in this summer throughout the downtown. Just little things like that, which make it that much easier for business to say, yes, I choose Elmhurst, because now I can have outdoor seating, because people can get around our properties better. Making sure that we remove obstacles falls into that. So when we re-examine our zoning, you know, we talked about at the very beginning, I said our mayor and our city council, and John went all the way back in the Wayback Machine to the Tom Marcucci days and Tom Borchert days, and I was lucky enough to work with both of those men. But what's really great about our now city council is that they're doing just what you said about businesses earlier, Ken. They're looking forward, they're looking now, and so they're not just relying on what did we do in the past, it's re-examining.
Elmhurst Brewing Company.
Absolutely.
A perfect example of our ordinances wouldn't have allowed them to be here. And the ordinance got changed, and then guess what? Suddenly now we have a brewing company in downtown.
Peter and Fraser were the first people I sat down with when I took this position full-time as economic development. And they just said, we have a dream to have this brewery in downtown Elmhurst. Do you think that's viable? And I said, well, you're in luck because the zoning literally just changed 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So it's to see that kind of progress in making Elmhurst business friendly. That's what my focus would be. That's my focus now, but if I was totally in charge, I would still make sure that was the main focus.
So what would you do?
I'd make sure that you stayed involved in the economic revitalization of your own house. And Elmhurst has done that for 20 years and reaped the benefits from it. While I earlier talked about location, there are still people who think that That's just it. You don't have to do anything. People will buy a home here, people will open a business here, people will spend money here. They'll do all that because of the location. Location is your advantage over everybody else around you, and you want to leverage that. But you can either let stuff happen to you, or you can be involved in the process and have a hand in the process, the way our city council and our mayor and our city manager and our assistant city manager and our business development coordinator have done, so that you have an active role in it. You're seeking out the best projects. My family moved here in 1955 when my mother was pregnant with me. The Elmhurst in 1970, when I was at Immaculate Conception, was way different than the Elmhurst my family moved in 55. And when I was taking the chamber job in 1999, Elmhurst was again a different community. Some people see that as not a good thing. I happen to think it's a good thing. You either develop or redevelop and you die, or you die.
Yeah,
and
reinvention.
And when you're in a landlocked community, something's always got to go for something new to come in. That's just the nature of it. So now we're 20 years past me taking the chamber job, and I am stunned at how well we're doing this. And communities around the Chicagoland area regularly reach out to either the city or the chamber and want to talk to us and say, how are you getting this done? How are you getting so many things? They'd be happy to have one project taking place, not a half dozen projects taking place.
Well, and I go back to everyone's rooting for everyone else. That it's endemic to what both of you are describing. I mean, your role is to facilitate businesses coming to Elmhurst and to try and find out who they might be and to make sure that people know what spaces are available and whatnot. And your role is often supportive of that, and then it goes one step further. If they join the chamber, and hopefully they do, they get the benefits then of the interaction between the organizations, and not just the chamber and the city, but the city center organization, Spring Road, York and Villette. I think you work together. Gee, God, what an idea.
People believe in Elmhurst. They don't just believe in the win-win scenario. They believe in the win-win-win. You can win, I can win, and by doing that, Erin wins.
Right.
As opposed to it's a net sum. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose.
So how do businesses find Elmhurst today? I mean, it isn't a matter of just going on a website or prowling the suburbs or whatnot all, but how do most of the new businesses that have come to town, how did that happen? And I know that's a generality, but...
Sure, I would say the key to economic development, no matter where you're at, is relationships. So it's that business's relationship with their broker, who has a relationship with another broker, who has a relationship with Elmhurst. It's that business owner who has a friend who said, I just got this phone call the other day, hey, my friend opened a business here, she's so happy, I want to bring my business to Elmhurst, how do I do that? So it's all different levels. The city is involved in economic development with just local relationships, like we talked about with John at the chamber, but also regionally. DuPage County has Choose DuPage. We're a part of the Illinois Economic Development Association, the International Economic Development Association, Select Chicago. I mean, there's all kinds of avenues for us to build these relationships with other people in my position in different communities. That's been fantastic because I might not have a space for you, but Tony Fraden and Bartlett might. And Tony remembers that and says, hey, we don't have a space for you, but you should try Elmhurst. That sounds like what you're looking for. And we have that statewide now, that relationship. And throughout the Midwest, we're growing that relationship with different people and our brokers, who are very important to us.
I take calls at the chamber, and it's usually one of two things. They're looking to get out of Cook County because of tax reasons. and again, location, for ideally across the border.
Absolutely.
And the other is people visit. They came to Elmhurst for a concert. They came to Elmhurst for a theater production. They came to Elmhurst to eat in the downtown. And they just went, wow, I really like this community. I could see my business here.
So we're almost at the close, but I wanted to ask you each a new business, either already here or that you know is coming, that you're excited about, that's interesting? Erin, you want to go first?
You want me to start? I feel like there's so many, I don't like to just pick one.
Well, but you know.
Well, I'm going to pick one that I think is very different for Elmhurst, but very on trend with our push towards entertainment venues and moving forward and taking a great old space and making it new again. And that's 630 West Lake Street, which was the former arena, or depending on what age you are, it could be Hurricanes or Olivers or whatnot in your past. But it will be a new business called Throw Nation. They're out of Dublin, Ohio. The proprietor, Marty Parker, has multiple locations. Their main focus is axe throwing. They also have what they call a stump, where you use a rock hammer to hammer nails into the stump before your opponents do. They have a company that they have on Michigan Avenue right now called Game Show, which is customized trivia that they'll be offering there. So team trivia, you could have the Chamber versus the City, for example.
We'd crush them.
They have a multitude of different active, what they call it, custom guided activities. And I think it's fantastic for Elmhurst, and it's a great draw, not just for the people of Elmhurst, but for the people outside of Elmhurst. I'm really excited for them to open, and they should be open in September.
John, you have one?
I've got two potential, but I don't know what they are or who they are. The Opus Development project, the Mark, at First Avenue in Addison in downtown Elmhurst. First bit of residents are moving in on April 15. You always want to be moving in on tax day. But then by the first week of May, most of the residents that have signed leases will be moving in there, and they have been hush-hush on the prospective tenants for those two parcels. And a good buddy of mine, Kenny Stubbs, is actually the project manager. Ran into him at a Blackhawks game, and I couldn't get it out of him who they might be. So I can only assume there are going to be two great additional tenants to the downtown, and you're going to go there and see them in the next month or so.
I thank you both for joining me on this very first Elmhurst Our Community. For Erin Jason and John Quigley, I'm Ken Bartels. This has been the EOC, and I look forward to being with you again.